You say anger never works, and you also call anger a liar.
And I typed in meditation because I thought, well, maybe that would help. When you are angry, you are never processing information correctly. You can never make a good decision.
Welcome, SLAE family. I am thrilled to be back today with best-selling author Trish Ahjel Roberts. Trish, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Trish, you may recall if you've been around SLAE, was the author of the 12 Steps to Mind-Blowing Happiness. And that's a fantastic book. Now she has another fantastic book that has just come out, The Anger Myth. And it even has, in the very beginning, a little note from Jack Canfield himself. So we are so excited that you have just another great book that is available on Amazon. And today we're going to dive into you, your book, the impact you're having, and let everybody soak up all the joy you bring.
I can't wait.
So, first and foremost, let's just take a minute for people who have not had the pleasure of getting to know you. Tell us a little bit about your mission to create happiness for people, how you got into the first aspect of doing that. You've got a best-selling book, and what has inspired you into this new book?
Yeah, so my journey really started back in 2010. It was a difficult time in my life. I was a single mom. I had just moved to Atlanta. I just broke up with the boyfriend. The job wasn't going well. Like everything was just kind of wonky. And I remember sitting down at the kitchen table and I typed in meditation because I thought, well, maybe that would help. And, and then I found a Buddhist center that was not far from where I lived. They had a 30-minute lunchtime meditation. So I said, okay, let me go to that. Let me go to that. And from there, my life really changed. Our first meditation was on death, which is not what you would think that you would want your first meditation on, but it really made me appreciate my life. It was almost like a near-death experience. And from there, I just started studying, more in Buddhism and coaching and yoga, and really transformed my own life from being kind of cranky and angry because things weren't working out the way that I wanted them to really learning to be mindful and present in the moment and look at those emotions differently. So, 12 Steps to Mind Blowing Happiness started as kind of a book that I was writing for this retreat that I was hosting. And I know you said you loved it, which I love. But as I would get interviewed about the book, people would say, well, 12 steps is a lot, Trish. What's the most important one thing that you can do to be happier? And it was always step number 5, which is transforming your anger.
Mhm.
So that's why the anger myth became the next book. So, like, if there's only one thing that you would work on to have a better quality of life, it's to change this, the way that we've been taught about what anger is and how to approach it in our lives.
It's amazing. And you have been recognized for your great writing by a lot of people, including Jack Canfield, which is quite
Yes.
impressive. Yeah. So,
Thank
so
you. I actually
that
have a
that
little news. I have a little news too I can share, which I don't know if you know. So Jack Canfield did do the forward for the book, but we also got really glowing reviews from Library Journal and Booklist. And I got news that we're going to be translated into, of all places, Russia as our first international language translation. So yeah, it's been a lot of good feedback with the book so far.
that's amazing. Congratulations. And it just came out and look at you already. Just
Thank
remarkable.
you. Thank you.
So in the book, you talk about anger, and it's really interesting to see how you dissect it. You say anger never works, and you also call anger a liar. And I loved that. When I first read it, I was kind of like, hmm. And then you broke into some examples of how that is so true. And I'd love it if you could share it with our listeners, please.
Yeah, so originally the book title that I had was Anger is a Lie, but it was kind of this weird title. So what I like about that is when you are angry, you are never processing information correctly. You can never make a good decision or assessment of what's taking place. And in the book, there's an example which we may have seen in our own lives. I know I probably have before, where it's a couple, somebody that you love, you're in a relationship, you thought they were fantastic last week, you were telling all your friends about them. Now you're angry with them And all of a sudden it's like, this person's an idiot. They're terrible. I don't know why. I don't know why I ever got involved with this person. So in that moment, you cannot see them. Like you might even hear the term blind with fury or blind with rage.
Mm.
You really cannot see them for the individual that they are. And if you make any kind of judgments or words come out of your mouth in that moment, it's going to be all leading you down the wrong path. So in the book, it gives an example of a woman saying really terrible things to her husband in anger because of something that he did. And then now, instead of having the one problem, the one thing that, that he did that she didn't like, now she has the problem of what she said that she didn't mean, how he might react to the anger from what she said, because now maybe he stormed off and did something he didn't need to do, you
Yes.
know? So you end up with multiple problems instead of pausing and realizing that that feeling is not helping you.
It was
Yeah.
remarkable the way you broke it down because it went from one problem to three. The original problem, then there is the problem of what she said, and then there's the problem of what he said. So now you've got damage to the relationship, all this mess that comes out of it. So with that being said,
Exactly.
you are not strictly identifying that anger is that it never works and that it's a liar. You're really providing a solution. And you talk about the steps to a solution, tame and reframe. Can you tell everyone a little bit about what the steps are and how people tackle it?
Yeah. So before I get into tame and reframe, can I talk a little bit about the variations of anger, what I call anger seven cranky cousins?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Please do. Yes. The cousins,
Because I
that's a
think
good one. Yeah,
that's
go
so
ahead.
important. Usually when we think of anger, we think of like, rage or flying off the handle. And what usually happens, many people will say, well, I'm not angry, but they're just walking around cranky and miserable for a good part of the day. And that's because they don't identify the subtler forms of anger. So I
Mm.
call them anger seven cranky cousins. It's disappointment, annoyance, frustration, jealousy, impatience, guilt, and resentment. And then when I say that to people, they say, "Oh my God, that's me. That's me like half of the time." So the first step is understanding that anger happens when you don't get your own way. And
Mhm.
it's a funny thing that we even think that it makes sense for us to get our own way all the time, you know? Um, so from there, you were asking me about what to do, right?
Oh, but hold on. If we're going to go there, then also I love that you talk about different places or different triggers. You talked about relationships, and everything. And one of the ones that cracked me up was traffic.
Oh, that's a huge one. Yeah. It's like
So
really nice, normal people can turn into maniacs when they're driving.
yeah, the cousins come out a lot when people get behind the wheel. Okay.
Exactly, exactly. And there are some reasons for that. Um, One is that generally speaking, we're a little bit less identifiable. So it's almost like how social media can be sometimes. You're a little bit anonymous when you're behind the wheel. People typically can't see you that well. So there's that. You have a sense of power because you have this motorized vehicle. You might have more of a sense of fear because you could get in and like you could literally get hurt while you're driving. Um, and then sometimes if you're someone who doesn't feel very powerful in your day-to-day life, the highway could be the great equalizer. So now you're just as big and bad as the next guy. So there's a lot of psychology behind why people,
Yes.
feel that way in traffic. But
And sometimes they're late, which is really their own fault. But it's easier to get mad at everybody else if you're late than
you know how they say I resemble that remark, Leanne? I tend to be one of those people who are just like, making sure my arrival is like 1 minute before I'm supposed to be. So that could totally be me. But
And you know what? It's funny. I mean, I know we're going off for a quick second here, but it's so true. People say things on social media, mind blowing. Like it is incredible the nasty commentary and things that you would never have someone say to another person's face. But and it's not just celebrities. I mean, it's just crazy what people do. I mean, that is a huge place of anger and some real what do you call it? Taming and reframing needs to go on there. So let's dive into the taming and reframing.
Okay, so when you have that sense, and for me, what I used to feel was just like kind of my hair standing on end, like maybe somebody just said something ridiculous to me, or it could be someone cut you off in traffic. It could be your partner did something that you told them not to do or asked them not to do, and here they go again. So, whatever that trigger is for you, the first thing that you want to do, and I love that the 5 steps spell out anger to make it easier to work with and remember. But the first step is always to acknowledge your anger. So this is not about pretending you're happy when you're not. It's not pretending that somebody did not bother you. It's not about, um, you know, pretending that what happened is exactly what you wanted when it isn't, right? So you want to acknowledge how you feel in your body, and anger is typically a body experience. So you might feel hot, you might have your hair stand on end, you might feel tension in your body. Whatever that is, you want to develop your self-awareness to the point where you say, okay, I see you, right? Now, I don't necessarily have to follow you because I know that this is not going to lead me down a good path, but just noticing, acknowledging is the first step. The second step, the N, is to notice your breath.
Mm,
So usually when we get angry, we stop breathing. We
yeah.
might stop breathing and then go start twitching or something. So you want to breathe. Now you could do it as a cleansing breath, which is in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's great if you can let out a sigh. It might be weird, so it may not be appropriate for you to let out a sigh. But even if you just slow down your breath, like a slow 3 count in and a slow 3 count exhale, it could take a fraction of a second. But in that fraction of a second, you're calming your nervous system, you're allowing some oxygen into your brain, and you're creating a pause between your trigger and your response. So you're
Mm.
creating some space there. There's 5 steps, but in the book, I encourage people to start with the first two, to practice the first two until you find that to be pretty easy, and then to add on the other elements.
And most of the time, I think that those first two are so powerful because where people get into trouble, where they take that one issue and turn it into three, like you used that in that one example earlier, is when they react immediately, when they don't stop. I mean, if people would just stop and breathe for a minute, it would change a lot of things.
And a lot of it is, it's our ego. Like you say something to me, and I think, do you know who I am? Who does she think she's talking to? Which could all be true, but we can pause and create a little space in there. Um, and I can go through, you want me to go through the next few steps? Do you want
Yeah,
me to?
that'd be
Okay.
great. Yes.
Okay. So once you have taken a breath, the next thing is the G, right? Which is to gear up your imagination. So maybe you said something I don't like, right? There have been times, believe it or not, Leanne, where I have said things to people that they did not like. I
Famous
know.
stuff.
Yeah. So when you gear up your imagination, it gives you the opportunity to have some empathy. Like
Hmm.
we need our imaginations to have empathy because I have to imagine me being in your shoes. Maybe you had a bad day or you're having a rough start to your day. I don't, something might have, it's funny. My father used to say when somebody was like really grumpy at the cash register or something, he's like, you don't know what's going on with them. Her mother might have died yesterday. Her husband might have beat her up this morning. Like you really don't know what people are going through. So just taking that next step to think about, okay, let me think about someone other than myself. And
It kind of leads back to that expression that people say, hurt people hurt people. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of times that's why people are like that. They're hurting.
yeah, yeah, but I think we all make mistakes. Like even if someone cuts in front of me in traffic, there have been times when I didn't know where I was going and I probably cut in front of someone too. And I hope that they're not like angry with me because I'm just lost. So yeah, just developing that imagination and that empathy. So that's the G. And then the next step after that is the E. So for small situations like somebody cutting you off in traffic, that would just be entertaining yourself. Like, you don't have to chase them down and honk them and try to, tailgate them or do anything crazy. You could probably just phone a friend, listen to a podcast, just do something else. It doesn't require that much attention from you. Now, the book gets into, deeper causes of anger, where, like we have the political environment now.
Yes.
You might need to get educated about some topics, right? Or some things might be so big that you need to embark on more of a spiritual understanding. So I call that enlightening yourself. Um, but that's the E. And the last step in the 5-step process is the R, which is recognize your success. And that's closing the habit change loop. So when you want to build a new habit, right, you want to maybe start running. So you get up, you get your shoes together. When your run is over, you want to reward yourself in some way. So maybe you have a latte, or you know, even just tell yourself, good job, look at you go, Many times we'll track our stuff with apps so we can see how fabulous we are. So the last R, is just pausing again. So really, you're starting with a pause in the beginning to create some space between the trigger and response. And then at the end, you're pausing to congratulate yourself, which many people never do. They just go on to the next thing. So,
Yes.
yeah,
And
so that's
when you make strides forward, it is important to do that. And each time you do, you can do a little bit more, a little bit better the next time. We used to talk about when I used to get mad, I would give myself a time limit on how long I was allowed to get mad. And my goal was
that's
to
good.
shorten the time limit. So I'm like, okay, I'm only allowed to be mad about this for 5 minutes. Okay, I got 5 minutes to be really mad. Then I got to get back to what I was doing. Now
Yeah,
you
and what
did,
I like is it gives you a way to process it, because
yes.
sometimes you could say, "Okay, I'll be mad for the 5 minutes," and then you're just kinda like, thought spiraling for 5 minutes, and then when it's over, there's not a sense of resolution, you know? And I think that the inclusion of the empathy
Mm.
and perhaps the education, whatever that resolution piece is that takes you to some sort of constructive action, is
Your
the
method's
part
a
that
lot more
allows you.
sophisticated than mine was. Let me But empathy is a big thing, and you talk about, we're going back to traffic for a quick second, but sometimes people will be, on a one lane road, et cetera, and they're driving behind somebody who's going really, really, really slow. And, I might have an unnamed family member that's really bad about tailgating people like that. And I said, "What if that was your mother? What if that was your grandmother? Like, would you want somebody doing that?" So I think empathy is so important, and to put yourself in other people's shoes. I love the different ways that you point that out.
There are lots of stories in the book. I'm sure you've seen them, because I really wanted to give examples that people could relate to in
Yes.
all different facets of their life. When you were telling that story, it reminded me of when I when I was pregnant with my daughter, and my husband was driving me to the hospital, and I kept telling him, "Run the red light, run the red." Like I had this child in less than 2 hours. And I was like, run the red light. So it's just like, you never know what's going on in someone's car. And even if it is someone who just has the worst behavior, like they just are a jerk,
Yeah.
right? You can still have compassion, because apparently they were not raised very well. Like they probably didn't have your parents. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
you can still find that compassion. I mean, I would have a lot of compassion for jerks.
So let's leave road rage for a minute. Let's get on to some of the other things. In addition to being a best-selling author, there are multiple streams of how you're impacting people. One of them is that you do a lot of public speaking. So
I
in
do.
your public speaking, share with us a little bit about what your goal is to handle that platform, and also a little bit about maybe diversity and inclusion and how you try and include that in your speaking as well.
I do. So I speak a lot on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also compassion and, of course, transforming anger to action. And I love when I can combine these conversations about diversity with happiness, because this idea that, we live in these kind of silos and we don't like anyone else and we just want to be homogenous. It is not fun. I don't care what anyone says to me. It doesn't sound like fun. Diversity is the way that this world is set up. We have all different kinds of people, all different cultures, all different religions. Learning that empathy and compassion is kind of the bridge, to turning it from, an exercise where you have to do it, you have to check a box and tell everybody that you're going to play nice in the sandbox, to actually something that, what is the word that I want? That actually creates more, I'm just going to go with juicy, that just makes your life juicier. Enrichment, I think that's what I was saying. Yeah, something that actually enriches your life as opposed to something that's just, I have to play nice in the sandbox.
Yes. Now,
Mhm.
so you've got the speaking platform, you're an author, best-selling author, and you also have a consulting firm too. Would you share with us what the mission and what are the services that you provide through your consulting firm?
Yes. So it's primarily coaching, some consulting. I do transformational coaching for people who are trying to change their lives, break past limiting beliefs, give them that accountability. It's hard to do it on your own. So I've had really, really powerful experiences with people in the transformational coaching space.
Mm.
And then I also do book coaching. So I help people who want to write their books. And I've been doing that for over 3 years now. Yeah. So, and then I also lead retreats and yeah,
That
I
that's a long list right there.
Hey, what else do I do?
So, one of the things I love to ask a very successful entrepreneur like yourself. So, you've got a consulting firm, you're doing speaking engagements, you're, on another book now. What is it that you do personally because you're writing about happiness, you're teaching people happiness? How do you balance all of those plates that you have spinning and make sure that you take care of yourself? Make sure that you're personally happy, that you're doing self-care. What's your secret or what's your strategy for that?
Yeah, that's so important. So, what do I do? I have very serious boundaries. So for me, normally my mornings are open. I don't schedule any clients in the morning. That's time for meditation and yoga and for catching up. So if I need to prepare for a client, I always have that space available. Same thing with my Fridays. My Fridays are not typically time where I will schedule clients at all. So it's time for me to do whatever Trish wants to do on Fridays. Now I do work weekends, but usually weekends I'm like in a coffee shop or doing something really nice. So I keep really strong boundaries around my work hours because when you are self-employed, you could really work 22 hours in a day, especially now that most of my work is remote. Um, but yeah, meditation is very important to me. My yoga time is extremely important to me.
I think that your that boundaries is brilliant, though, especially if you have certain times, like, you said on Friday. I mean, for me, nobody's finding me on a Sunday. There's just no way. I leave the planet as far as I was going, completely off the grid. But it was something that, I struggled with. I would used to be one of those people who work 22 hours a day. I mean, it's really easy to
Hmm.
do when you're an entrepreneur. So I love the way you're sharing that. And if you were going to pass on some words of wisdom, and there was somebody who's looking to find their path, whether they want to be an author, a speaker, or just branch out into being an entrepreneur, if you were going to start all over again,
Hmm.
how would you advise them to, go after everything and make a big splash and get everything up and running, but not completely lose yourself? How do you juggle that as a newer person in the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, I think if I were to do it again, I would certainly build up my business more before leaving my 9 to 5. I was
Mm.
in a weird situation, and you know this because you used to be a diversity attorney, where I have been in 4 class action lawsuits. So when I worked as a financial advisor, so I kind of ran away from from my full time work. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I would recommend that people build up their business before leaving their full time, and also get get coaching earlier. I I got, I work with a lot of coaches on my own, so mentorship, coaching, modeling is so important. Collaboration, connection, all of those things are so incredibly important for entrepreneurs. So I would say start with that sooner than I feel like I waited a year or a year and a half before I really started accessing people who just had more information than I have. And there's so much. When I worked as a employee, I was responsible for like this little piece of the world, let's say. And when you become an entrepreneur, excuse me, and when you become an entrepreneur, it's like you're wearing 28 hats and you're the tech department and your HR and your marketing and your sales. So, yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. So
It it is remarkable to become an entrepreneur. You don't realize how many different things that you're taking on, and it all falls on you at the end of the day.
I
But
love it though.
I was gonna just say,
I
but if
love
it's
it. I wouldn't change it for anything.
me too. What if it's in your blood, you're just like, "I'm not working for somebody else. I'll do it myself." So exciting.
And if
Now
you're
if
creative, if you're creative as an entrepreneur, people don't necessarily think about it as creative. Usually we think of the arts, but
Mhm,
you're constantly creating new things.
yes. And
Mhm.
even if you're not in the creative sector, like, you still have to create new business, create new ways of getting the word out, get people's
Right.
attention. I mean, there's so much you have to do to stay current and to continue to expand your client base no matter what you're doing. And
Yeah,
speaking
you're
of
always
client
creating
base
offerings, your offerings, your sales, your marketing. Like there's always there's some creative element there for sure.
and speaking of people who expanding your impact in your client base. I love for people to not only, first of all, again, the book is Anger Myth and it's available on Amazon. Fabulous read. Uh, another one, what would you expect? I mean, that's Trish for you. But can you also tell them where to find you, your, social media, website, anything about your consulting firm? So if people want to learn more about your books, your services, your speaking engagement, how do they find you?
Absolutely. So I definitely do 15-minute consultations. So if anybody's looking to make change in their life, if they want to write a book, even if they're looking for a speaking career, I do consult on all those topics.
Yeah,
Um, and then you can find me just based on my name. I know my middle name's a little wonky, so you have to be able to spell it, but it's Trish Ahjel Roberts, Trish Ahjel Roberts.com, and Trish Ahjel Roberts on all social media. You can find out all about my book, The Anger Myth, at theangermyth.com. And you can take the Anger Myth quiz there and find out your anger quotient. And I have some good bonuses that I want to tell your audience about as well.
great.
So if they purchase a copy of the book and they shoot me the receipt over to info at trishahjelroberts.com, they will get a free guided meditation that will help them transform their anger and other negative emotions into calm or constructive action, which is what we all want. And for those of you who do an Amazon review for me, I am hosting a virtual wellness retreat on May 18th, and that's free for my Amazon reviewers. So it's a half day retreat, and we'll be able to do some meditation together and really set aside some time for some self reflection and for some relaxation. So I hope. I
That's
hope that some of your
fantastic.
folks can see me. Yes.
So contact information and freebies. Everybody's got to
Yes.
love that. Well, I really appreciate you being here. And before we wrap up, are there any future projects or anything that you want to leak to us? Do you know what's next on the horizon for you? I know this book just came out, so you might not mentally be in that place, but is there anything that you've got kind of cooking in the back of your head?
Let's see. I do have a few things. I always have something cooking in the back of my head, Lee. So I have a few things. One is um, the Mind Blowing Happiness Academy is something that I'm working on. There's a waiting list now. So if read 12 Steps to Mind Blowing Happiness or the Anger Myth, and you think, oh my gosh, this is great. I would love to level up my life and really be happier and be in community. I'm building that out now. So I would love for you to look for that. And that is mindblowinghappiness.com. And then I'm working on future retreats. So I took a group of 12 to Ghana, West Africa last year. And now I'm kind of, people are asking me different places they want to go. So make sure to, take the anger quiz. It'll put you on my mailing list. So as things come up, you can find out about it. And I'm going to be in Denver. I don't know if this may not work for you, but I'm going to be in Denver next week. I'm
Oh my goodness.
speaking at the Radar Conference, and I will have a book event out in Denver as well. So,
Fantastic. Well,
yeah, stay tuned.
in addition to enjoying the book, there is that a quiz in the beginning, and then you recommend that when you finish it, you kind of go back later and take the quiz again. You get little points, and you can see where you are on the scale of, you know, how bad your anger might be,
Well,
and the
I think it's
improvement, and you
more
can
about
celebrate.
awareness. I think it's
You can
more about
celebrate, absolutely.
awareness.
Well, thank you again, Tricia. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Please keep us posted on any of your exciting projects or anything else that you're doing, because both your books are fantastic. Congratulations on all your success. And I know you're just scratching the surface. With your mind-blowing happiness will come your mind-blowing career as well. Really excited for you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.